Welcome back. It's an extremely dangerous synthetic drug that is being added to heroin, and it's already been blamed for at least 2 deaths in Massachusetts, and it could very well be here in Connecticut. It's called W-18, and experts say it's so powerful, more and more addicts are looking for it.
How bad is it? Well, get this. It's 100 times more powerful than fentanyl, another heroin additive, and 10,000 times more powerful than morphine. Enough to make health officials very concerned. What do you need to know? Here with some answers, Dr. Craig Allen. He's medical director at Rushford, one of Connecticut's major facilities for treatment of drug addiction. Thank you, Dr. Allen, for coming in.
Thank you for having me on.
The alarm bells have rung on this, and what's being done about this W-18? And where did it come from?
And what is it? We have a lot of questions.
And I have some answers for you. W-18 is a research chemical, and it was originally developed back in the 1980s at University of Alberta.
Canada.
In Canada, that's right. And it was at a time where they were trying to make pain medication that wasn't as addictive as morphine at that time. And it actually received a patent in Canada and in the United States, but it was never picked up by a drug company. Can you imagine why that might have been?
You're worried about it?
That's right. It was too potent, and they worried about being able to resuscitate somebody if they were to overdose on it. We use naloxone or Narcan. Now we distribute it, try to get our law enforcement first responders to be carrying it, and new law that was passed focuses on that. But with a substance this potent, would Narcan even reverse the overdose? So no drug companies picked this up, and it sat on the shelf for 10, 20 years until apparently in China some scientists started to manufacture it for illegal use, and that's where it came from.
Oh,
and this is worldwide then? I didn't realize.
Well, I don't know how. I don't know.
Okay.
But it came in through Canada, and it was found there. I don't know how widespread it is in the United States. Hopefully not too widespread. But then there was a large amount found down in Florida, and that was up in Canada in December of 2015, and down in Florida more recently than that. The problem is that people who have an addiction, like an addiction to heroin, are going to be driven to continue to use that drug until they get into treatment, and there's no one is looking at what goes into the drugs. They get cut with whatever a drug dealer wants to cut them with. And we've heard about fentanyl and synthetic fentanyl, which is so powerful and has led to so many deaths in the Northeast and across the country.
And this is so many 100 times more powerful than that.
Yeah, and here's something 100 times more powerful than that. So the scary, frightening thing is, if you are using these drugs, you'll use whatever you can get, and there's an attraction to something that might be more potent and could potentially, the thought is, could give you that high that you're looking for. Once your body adapts to the drug, that's why you keep using higher and higher doses.
So do we think this W-18 is here in Connecticut? I mean, obviously it's right over the border in Massachusetts, blamed for 2 deaths, they suspect.
We don't know. It hasn't been identified in Connecticut. The problem is that usual toxicology screening that would be done wouldn't pick it up. You'd have to send it out to a specialty lab, so you'd have to be suspicious.
How long would that take?
It could take weeks. So it could be in an area and in heroin that people are using and maybe overdosing from it, and we might not know for a while.
But as a professional, I would guess you have to believe that it probably is here if it's in Massachusetts.
Yeah, my belief and my colleagues, our approach is that heroin is very, very dangerous, as are all opioid medications like the opioid analgesics when they're being misused, Vicodins, Percocets, OxyContin. And our goal is to try to help people to get off of these drugs. You can share the information of how dangerous they are, and I think that helps. But the only surefire way to approach something like this is to help people to get into recovery.
How have you seen those numbers grow over the last few years, would you say?
Well, in 2014, there were over 300 heroin deaths in the state. state. 2015, that number went up over 400. And so that's just heroin. If you include the opioid analgesics, the number last year was 657 unintentional opioid-related deaths. That's a huge number of deaths. This is a small state.
Now, the heroin overdose deaths, how many of those, what percentage of those involved the fentanyl, for example, also? Or do you know?
A large percentage did. The numbers are known. The number of fentanyl deaths has gone up astronomically, much more rapidly than heroin on its own. And the Chief Medical Examiner's Office has that data. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the numbers, but they've gone up very rapidly.
And when we say more powerful, I want to make sure we understand this. Do we mean it's more likely to cause death if it's mixed with heroin, or is it just that it gives a more potent high, or both?
You would have to dilute this drug so many times in order to make it safe.
So would that make it more expensive for somebody to buy heroin laced with this?
It actually it makes it less expensive, and that's probably an attraction for some dealers.
Cutting some of the heroin out. Yeah.
Heroin and opioid addiction it's affecting everyone.
Yeah.
All communities. It's not just one class of person or anything like that. What are you seeing coming into your clinic? People from,
every town in Connecticut has been affected by this. This epidemic is more widespread in the suburbs. And your average user is a 25-year-old Caucasian male. The person who's going to die from an overdose is probably a 30-year-old Caucasian male, or a 30-year-old male for sure. One of the connection between the opioids and the heroin is that 80% of new users of heroin started off by using non-medical opioid analgesics. So one of the problems is that there are a lot of these pills out there. And people will start overprescribing, right? And so you've got a flood of these pills out in the community. People start using them. They're very expensive, and so they turn to heroin, which is very inexpensive. And as we're finding more and more potent all the time.
Now, the state law that was passed now limits the initial prescription to 7
That's right.
days?
Yeah, 7 days. 7 days.
Which
is reasonable. The Center for Disease Control came out with guidelines about three weeks ago, which points out that the preferred treatment for chronic pain lasting longer than 90 days, is a non-opioid approach. For acute pain, a prescription for 3, maybe 5 days worth of medication should be enough to manage acute pain. A week's worth of medication is a reasonable amount. And if someone continues to suffer from pain, then they should talk to their doctor and be reassessed to see if they need more or they need something else.
So that's advice to parents, and if you have a loved one who's doing this, you got to be using the painkillers, really monitor that very closely.
Yeah. One of the things that was pointed out in the CDC guidelines was something that's just good medicine, which is you should share the potential risks of the medication that you're going to be offering, and you should also share what other strategies are available. So, for instance, if you go and see your dentist and they're going to pull a wisdom tooth, you should hear, we can use an opioid analgesic, we can use OxyContin, but also evidence shows that you'll get good pain relief if we prophylactically use ibuprofen at higher doses and then use it. So that's the kind of conversation people should have, and they should know if they're getting an opioid analgesic, there's a potential for addiction. There's a potential for overdose. You need to put it in a safe place. If someone gets into that medication, they could overdose and die if a kid gets into it. That's the kind of conversations we want our healthcare providers to be having.
Right.
Oh, Dr. Allen, thank you very much for being our guest today on The Real Story.
Appreciate important information.
Thank you.